great football team. And they were hungry. They had had quite a few losing seasons in a row. And that's how I started, by knowing one family, getting to know that kid, having that kid help me get to learn who the others were, being a very strong disciplinarian that just, you couldn't tolerate anything. You know, just let them know that maybe you were only 5, 6 years older than them, but you were going to rule with the iron hand. And in those days, you could do a lot of things you couldn't even think about doing today. So,
but then how'd you go about getting a coaching staff and hiring assistants and that type of thing too? That couldn't have been easy either.
I got who they gave me.
Okay.
An auto shop teacher who had played at NYU, which was a big program, but he was an older man. The JV freshman basketball coach was my freshman football coach, and one other fellow was left from the staff, and I kept him. We had 4 guys. And then the following year, they allowed me to hire one person. And there was a young guy coming out of college, and I hired him. And then the next year, I convinced him to let me hire another guy. Okay. And that was Ronnie Dario, who was a great Hoboken football player, and he had played at Wagner, and he was mature. You know, he had left school for a while and then went back to school because he got married. And Ronnie was a coach, and I hired Bobby Lisa another year. Okay. So I got some former football greats out of Hoboken to become my assistants, and that was that.
Okay. And was it hard to establish the idea of this was your program? I mean, considering the fact, like you just said, you're only 4, maybe 5 years older than these kids as you were coaching them. Was it hard to establish, like, okay, this is my program, I'm in charge, and this is, you know, I'm the final say?
I don't think it was hard at all. I think it was more about the discipline. I think it was about the type kids that I had who were hungry kids. I started a lot of sophomores my first year. Eddie Stinson, who went on to be, you know, great coach in the state of New Jersey, still is, was one of my players. Another kid, Tony Giordano, went on to have an unbelievable career as a track coach down at Asbury Park, numerous state champions. And they were very hungry individuals. And I introduced weight training, which no one was doing then. And those kids stayed. We had like a big closet where we kept our weights, and then we'd pull them out into the hallway. And they came after school. You know, we did all of that. You know, we did things we shouldn't have been doing in those days. You know, we went into the gym after school, and we'd work on our blocking and things like that. And they knew that I was willing to put in the time, and they were willing to put in the time. And I think that just established what we had to do. You know, we had a big group out of the projects. And a couple of the mothers said to me, you know, these kids don't come home at night. So I used to go to the projects at night and ride around and look for them and tell them, hey, your mother wants you better go home now. And things like that helped it to develop into what we wanted it to develop into.
Okay. And how was it around that same time when you got to meet your beloved wife, Pat?
No, I met Pat. I met my wife. I had graduated from high school, and she was a sophomore. And I was still, you know, I would still, whenever I could, go back to football games. She was a cheerleader. I had known her parents through the...
Did she go to St. Michael's still?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow, okay.
I had met her parents through the Booster Association at St. Michael's, so I knew them. And that's how it happened.
Wow, okay. So were you already married at that time when you got the job at Hoboken?
When I got the job in Hoboken, I was married 6 months.
Oh, okay. So you were a young coach with, you know,
with a younger wife.
With a younger wife, and just establishing yourself. Yeah. And at that time, did you say to yourself, okay, I really want to make it go here, and did you ever think of yourself of moving on and being anywhere else, or did you feel that was a place to, you know, to be entrenched?
My wife always says to me, whatever happened to that house with the little white picket fence on a college campus? And we laugh about it, but I didn't think I would be in Hoboken for the rest of my life. No, I didn't.
Okay. You stayed there for, correct me if I'm wrong, 9 years?
11 years.
11 years, okay. And then the longtime football coach here that you mentioned before, a legend, in Joe Coviello, got pushed upstairs, became the superintendent of schools, left the head coaching job open here at North Bergen. And then you were hired, and correct me if I'm wrong, 1972?
73.
73, okay. I'm close. What was that like in the idea of not, first of all, taking over another program, but second of all, replacing a legend and replacing somebody who was larger than life at that time already?
I never looked at it that way. Although he was probably the greatest football coach that ever walked on a field in the state of New Jersey, I looked at it as an opportunity to go somewhere where I was living and just have an unbelievable program, a program that was well developed, a program that had great backing of the administration, of the city, of the town, and I thought it was a great opportunity. I never really thought about who I was following because I thought I could do as good.
Okay. And the idea of, at that time, where no one probably wanted the Hoboken job when you got it because they were a downtrodden program. North Bergen was on the rise, and I would imagine there was a lot of competition to get that job. And can you talk a little bit about that? And how much did maybe Coviello go to bat for you to get that job?
I don't really know.
Okay.
I know that he and I had a conversation the year before, and there was talk of that happening. And he was probably going to stay one more year. And they talked about me coming in as the freshman coach here that year. And I said, no, I just wouldn't leave Hoboken. I would wait and then see what happened.
Okay. And that would, if you did that, that would have been a step down to go from being
that's
a head
what I
varsity
felt.
coach to,
and there was no guarantees.
Okay.
But Joe did try to help me the year before that. Pascack Hills, one of his former coaches, Pascack Valley, Joe Talamo, had retired. And Joe had recommended me to Joe Talamo, and I was only in my house 2 or 3 years, and the money was just about the same as I was making, and I couldn't afford to, in those days you wanted to live where you worked, and
right.
I couldn't afford to live in that area at that time, so I stayed in Hoboken.
Okay. And at that time, then in '73, when you took the job here, your children, some of them already born, you were entrenched here already. This was where
they
you were
were
raised.
in. I had 3 of them, Susan, Michael, and Janine in Horace Mann School already.
Okay, so that was, it made all the
sense. It was a home run.
Right. And then in terms of not only being a football coach, what were you were hired to do at that time as well? You were hired as a history teacher, or?
I was hired here as a driver ed teacher.
Okay. But it was a perfect situation.
It was a great situation.
Okay. Talk about those early years in North Bergen. What was the difference between, say, the kids you coached in Hoboken, who were hard-nosed kids from the projects, who were your street tough kids, and then coming here in those early days, and maybe the difference in coaching kids? And did you change coaching philosophies at all?
No, not at all. The kids in North Bergen came from a better background at that time. Hoboken, the families were very hard-working families. The people here were more established. Most of them lived in their own homes, and there were no real projects to speak of. And it was a different situation. The kids were easier to coach.
Okay. Did you feel like you had to establish yourself all over again in terms of gaining respect here? Or did you feel, I paid my dues a little bit in 11 years in Hoboken, I established myself there, and that my reputation preceded itself?
No. I felt that I had to live up to what Joe Coviello had established.
Okay. And was that, that obviously wasn't an easy thing to do.
It was not easy.
Okay. Talk about those first couple early years.
Well, the first game of the year that I coached, we played Ridgewood, and we were going into the final minutes of the football game. We were winning, and a kid on their team, I don't remember who he was, he broke a run for about 85 yards down the sideline and scored, and we lose the game. And my mother and father were walking out of the stands, and someone walked up to them and said, "You should take him and take him back to Hoboken where he belongs."
You're already a failure. One game.
One game.
That's a great story. I never heard that. Okay. However, over the years, you had some incredible teams here in this building, and they're legendary. The '78 team is the best team in the history probably in North Bergen, and was the #1 team overall in the state of New Jersey. You've won 7 state championships. 1990 was a great year. 97 was your last undefeated year. Won the state championship there. And then the legacy is just unbelievable. Only 3 times in your career you haven't made the state playoffs. You had 21 straight years